Right now, you are actively sabotaging your own life, and you do not even realize it. You are running a psychological script designed by a society that profits directly off your insecurity. You think if you just say the exact right words, buy the expensive clothes, or send the perfectly timed text message, people will finally respect you and women will finally desire you. But the brutal truth is that your underlying energy reeks of quiet, unfiltered desperation. Do not click away out of ego, because by the time we reach the final minutes of this video, I am going to reveal one specific psychological pivot. A single, profound realization that completely rewires how the world sees you and shifts you permanently from the one who desperately chases to the one who is inherently valued. But here is the massive problem most guys face. They think attraction and respect are commodities they can purchase with constant effort. They believe that if they just bend over backwards, if they just accommodate every single demand, they will somehow be rewarded with loyalty and burning desire. And this is exactly where the modern man gets absolutely slaughtered. You cannot negotiate genuine desire. You cannot barter for respect through endless servitude. The ancient Stoics knew this thousands of years ago, but their profound wisdom has been buried under cheap pickup lines and toxic internet advice. Epictetus did not teach men how to manipulate women. He taught men how to master themselves. Because when you master your internal state, your external reality alters automatically, almost like magic. Let us dive deep into the specific architecture of a deeply grounded man. The first crucial element is the complete and total obliteration of performance. You are constantly on stage right now. You laugh at jokes that are not actually funny. You nod along to opinions you entirely disagree with just to keep the peace. You suppress your authentic edge because you are terrified of being disliked or rejected. But let me tell you the dark, unspoken secret about being a people pleaser. People do not respect the ones who please them. They use them, they drain them, and then they discard them. The Stoic man abandons the stage. He drops the mask entirely. He exists in a state of unshakable authenticity. When he disagrees, he states it calmly without raising his voice. When he does not find something amusing, he remains stoic. And this is the part that terrifies average men. They think that if they stop performing, they will be completely abandoned by society. But the exact opposite happens. When you finally stop performing, people finally start trusting you. Women possess an incredibly attuned biological radar for authenticity. They can feel the microscopic tension in your jaw when you are lying just to make them happy. They can sense the frantic, vibrating energy of a man who is terrified of losing their attention. And absolutely nothing dries up attraction faster than a man who needs a woman's validation to feel like he has a fundamental right to exist. The second pillar of this new masculine paradigm is the mastery of the pause. We live in an incredibly reactive, chaotic era. Someone insults you online, you fire back instantly. A woman takes 3 hours to text you back, you immediately send a double text to check the temperature of the interaction. You are a puppet, and your emotions are the strings being aggressively pulled by the external world. But this is where the elite percentile of men operate entirely differently. A grounded man introduces a massive, untouchable gap between the stimulus and his response. When chaos erupts, he breathes. When disrespect is thrown carelessly his way, he does not scramble to defend his fragile ego. He looks at the disrespect, examines it objectively, and decides if it is even worth his highly valuable energy. Most of the time, it is absolutely not. Imagine the sheer psychological power of a man who literally cannot be provoked. Imagine the magnetic pull of a guy who simply observes emotional turbulence without ever being swept into the tornado. Women test men constantly, not maliciously, but biologically. They need to know if the man steering the ship is going to panic the second a storm hits. When you react with anger, defensiveness, or anxiety, you fail the test. You prove you are easily broken. But when you simply hold unbroken eye contact, remain totally unbothered, and maintain your slow internal rhythm, you signal a level of evolutionary fitness that simply cannot be faked. This brings us to the third undeniable trait. which is the sheer, unapologetic willingness to be disliked. The average guy is heavily chained to the opinions of strangers. He curates his social media, his vocabulary, and his hobbies to fit a mold he thinks is socially acceptable. But here is the undeniable truth about human nature. We are violently drawn to the unapologetic. Think about the massive figures in history who commanded absolute devotion. They were not the ones who compromised their values. They were the men who drew a hard line in the sand and said, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." The Stoic understands that the approval of the masses is not just useless. It is often a giant red flag that you are living a mediocre life. Marcus Aurelius commanded an entire global empire, yet his private journals were entirely focused on rigorously judging his own actions, not worrying about the opinions of the Roman mob. When you walk into a room, you must immediately stop scanning the environment to see if people approve of you. You must scan the environment to see if you approve of them. That tiny internal pivot changes the entire way you carry your physical shoulders. It changes the deep resonance of your voice. It completely removes the nervous pitch shift that happens when an anxious man asks a question. You stop asking for permission to take up space. You simply occupy it because you belong there. The fourth phase of this total transformation is emotional alchemy. Men are heavily conditioned to believe two extreme, catastrophic lies about their own emotions. The first lie is that you must bury absolutely everything, act like a robotic sociopath, and never feel a single thing. The second lie is that you must be hyper-vulnerable, cry at every minor inconvenience, and treat your romantic partner like an unpaid therapist. Both of these paths lead directly to the destruction of your masculine core. And this is exactly where the Stoic framework swoops in to save you. Emotional alchemy is not about suppressing the internal fire. It is about actively using the fire to forge indestructible steel. When you feel the sharp sting of rejection, when you feel the heavy, suffocating weight of loneliness, you do not numb it with cheap dopamine hits. You do not scroll mindlessly for 3 hours or seek hollow validation from dating apps. You sit quietly with the burning pain. You let it burn completely through your nervous system. You process it fully, and then you extract the brutal lesson. A man who is genuinely not afraid of his own dark emotions is a man who fears absolutely nothing in the external world. Women desperately crave a man who is emotionally literate, but structurally unbreakable. They want to know you feel deeply, but they absolutely need to know that your feelings do not dictate your overarching mission. Your purpose must always sit on the iron throne of your mind, with your emotions acting only as temporary advisors, never as the king. Let us transition to the fifth pillar, which is the absolute sovereignty of your time and focus. If you want to know what a man truly values, just look at his daily calendar. The desperate man gives his precious time to literally anyone who asks. He drops his heavy gym session because a girl called. He skips his deep, focused work to go to a meaningless party he does not even want to attend. He is aggressively, pathetically available. But here is the psychological catch that most guys miss. Human beings only assign high value to things that are scarce. Oxygen is the most vital element on Earth, but we do not pay a single cent for it because it is everywhere. Gold is practically useless for biological survival, but men have slaughtered each other for centuries over it strictly because it is rare. Your focused attention is your gold. When you give it out freely to every single person who crosses your path, you massively inflate your own currency. It becomes entirely worthless. The grounded man has a terrifyingly strict, non-negotiable boundary around his time. He is deeply immersed in his own grand mission. He is aggressively building his physique, expanding his intellect, fortifying his financial empire, and cultivating his spirit. When he actually chooses to spend an hour with a woman, she physically feels the heavy weight of that hour. She knows he tore himself away from a deeply fulfilling life to be fully present with her. That undivided presence is absolutely electric. It is entirely different from the presence of a man who was just sitting on his dirty couch waiting for someone to entertain him. You must build a life that is so internally rich, so deeply engaging, that someone else's company is merely a fun bonus, never a desperate requirement for your happiness. And this leads directly into the sixth Stoic principle, the total eradication of outcome dependence. Most men operate on a fundamentally transactional basis in the dating market. They buy expensive dinners to extract affection. They listen to a boring story to extract intimacy. Their entire existence is a massive covert contract. I will do this favor for you, so you must do this favor for me. And when the world does not comply with their silent contract, they become incredibly bitter, resentful, and angry. But this is the exact trap that destroys your natural magnetism. The very moment you are attached to a specific outcome, you instantly hand over all your psychological power to the person who can grant or deny that outcome. The Stoic man operates from a place of pure internal virtue and self-respect. He acts with honor, physical strength, and unshakable kindness because that is simply who he is at his core. If a woman warmly reciprocates his energy, excellent. If she flakes, ghosts, or chooses another guy, it does not dent his internal armor for a single microsecond. Why? Because his inherent worth was never tethered to her fleeting decision. He does not view romantic rejection as a failure of his identity. He views it as a highly efficient filtering mechanism that just removed someone incompatible from his valuable timeline. Imagine how incredibly liberating it is to walk through the modern dating market without the suffocating fear of loss. When you are genuinely not afraid of losing her, you can finally interact with her completely naturally. You can tease her, challenge her, and lead her because you are not desperately calculating every single move to avoid scaring her away. This pure freedom is the exact frequency that triggers deep, primal biological attraction. The seventh concept we must ruthlessly unpack is the weaponization of solitude. The modern man is absolutely terrified of being alone in a silent room. He fills every single quiet moment with loud podcasts, mindless music, and endless social media scrolling. He jumps from one toxic, draining relationship to the next simply because he cannot stand the deafening roar of his own unexamined mind. But here is the raw, uncomfortable truth. If you cannot even tolerate your own company, why on earth would anyone else want to be around you? Solitude is the silent forge where true masculinity is constructed. You must learn to sit in an empty room with zero screens, zero distractions, and directly face the absolute reality of who you are. You must confront your deep flaws, your hidden cowardice, your daily laziness, and your crippling insecurities. And this is exactly why so few men ever achieve greatness. They tap out and grab their phones the exact moment the internal mirror reflects something ugly. But the man who stays in that uncomfortable room, the man who dissects his own psychology and rebuilds his character brick by heavy brick, emerges as a completely different species of human. When he re-enters the social world, he carries a profound, unshakable sense of gravity. He does not need anyone to complete his puzzle because he has already done the agonizing internal work of making himself whole. This deep wholeness is wildly intoxicating to women. They are completely exhausted by fragmented, broken boys looking for a mommy figure to glue their shattered pieces back together. They are desperately searching for a fully integrated, self-reliant man who can stand firmly on his own 2 feet and offer a safe harbor in the storm. Let us look at a massive practical case study that proves this dynamic perfectly. Look at the boardroom executive versus the modern dater. In business, a high-value man knows his leverage. He does not beg a client to sign a contract. He presents his immense value, clearly states his uncompromising terms, and if the client disrespects the deal, he calmly packs up his briefcase and walks away. That exact willingness to walk away forces the client to chase him, begging to sign. But take that exact same man, strip away his business suit, and put him on a date with a beautiful woman. Suddenly, his stoic leverage vanishes. He starts over-explaining himself. He starts laughing nervously. He accepts blatant disrespect and flackiness just because she is physically stunning. He abandons his entire framework of self-respect for the mere possibility of validation. And the woman, much like the client, instantly senses that he has zero leverage, zero boundaries, and zero internal grounding. She loses all respect and walks away. You must treat your personal dignity with the exact same ruthless precision as a billionaire treats his capital. You do not invest in bad assets, and you do not tolerate bad behavior. The eighth principle is the physical mastery of presence. We have talked extensively about the mind, but the body is the glaring billboard of your subconscious. A man who desperately lacks internal grounding physically shrinks in space. His shoulders roll forward submissively, his eyes dart around the room nervously scanning for approval. He speaks way too quickly, and his voice cracks with an upward inflection at the end of sentences, subtly begging the listener for agreement. The Stoic framework strictly demands that your physical vessel reflects your internal citadel. You must move slowly and deliberately. You must speak clearly, projecting from your deep chest, not your anxious throat. When you make a bold statement, let it hang in the air. Do not rush to fill the heavy silence with nervous laughter or extra explanations. When you look at someone, look at them with a relaxed, penetrating, unblinking gaze. Do not stare aggressively like a threat, but do not look away submissively like prey either. Just calmly observe. This kind of unhurried, deliberate physical movement signals directly to the primate brain that you are the absolute apex predator of your own environment. You are not frantically scanning for threats because you trust your ultimate ability to handle absolutely whatever comes your way. This deeply relaxed physical state is entirely contagious. When a woman is around a man whose nervous system is perfectly regulated, her own frantic nervous system begins to calm down automatically. She feels a profound, deeply biological sense of safety. And let me make this abundantly clear right now. You cannot seduce a woman who does not feel psychologically and physically safe around you. Your unshakable physical presence is the very bedrock of her desire. The ninth crucial element we must explore is the ruthless, unapologetic enforcement of high standards. Most guys have a mental list of demands for what they want in a partner, but the absolute second a highly attractive woman walks into their life, they burn that entire list to the ground. They tolerate blatant disrespect, constant flakiness, and manipulative behavior simply because she is beautiful. And this is the ultimate unforgivable betrayal of the self. When you accept garbage behavior, you are subconsciously telling yourself and the entire world that you genuinely do not believe you deserve any better. The grounded man has standards that are deeply carved in granite. It does not matter if she is a literal supermodel. It does not matter if she is rich, charming, or highly connected. If she disrespects his valuable time, plays childish, manipulative games, or attempts to disrupt his hard-earned peace, he cuts the cord without a single second of hesitation. He does not throw an emotional tantrum. He does not write a bitter, tragic paragraph explaining exactly why he is mad. He simply withdraws his attention, turns his back, and walks away forever. And this is the exact psychological moment that shifts the entire power dynamic of the universe. Women are incredibly accustomed to weak men who will tolerate absolutely anything for a tiny chance at intimacy. When they finally encounter a man who genuinely values his own self-respect far more than her physical beauty, it completely short-circuits their brain. It instantly, permanently elevates his value in her eyes. But listen closely. He does not enforce boundaries as a sneaky manipulation tactic to gain attraction. He enforces them purely because his internal peace is the single most sacred thing he owns, and he will violently defend it against anyone who threatens it. We are now nearing the absolute core of this entire philosophy, but we must touch on the brutal daily rituals that actually sustain this mindset. You cannot just listen to this video and magically become a grounded Stoic king. You must build undeniable, raw evidence for your own brain. When the alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, and the bed is comfortably warm, and every single fiber of your being wants to sleep for just 10 more minutes, you must violently rise. Why? Because the war of masculinity is won in the first 10 seconds of the day. Every single time you keep an incredibly difficult promise to yourself, you deposit a heavy steel brick into your internal fortress of self-respect. Every time you push through a grueling, agonizing workout, every time you choose reading difficult philosophy over mindlessly scrolling TikTok, every time you choose water over alcohol, you are aggressively proving to your subconscious that you are a man of undeniable, terrifying discipline and confidence, genuine, bone-deep, untouchable confidence is absolutely nothing more than your reputation with yourself. You cannot hack it. You cannot fake it with a new designer wardrobe. You must brutally earn it through thousands of invisible, painful, exhausting choices that absolutely nobody else sees. When you finally have an airtight reputation with yourself, you naturally exude a dominant, calm, lethal energy. You know exactly what you are capable of surviving, and you do not need anyone else on the planet to validate it. And now we have finally arrived at the final threshold. I promised you at the very beginning of this video that there was one specific psychological pivot, one profound realization that would change absolutely everything. The ultimate mystery of why some men effortlessly attract fierce devotion while others constantly chase ghosts. Here is the absolute, unvarnished truth that ties all of these powerful Stoic principles together. The single most attractive, powerful, and magnetic trait a human male can possess is the genuine, unshakable willingness to let go. You must radically accept that absolutely everything outside of your own mind is entirely temporary. People will come and people will leave. Intense relationships will spark, and they will inevitably fade. The modern man is completely terrified of this dark reality. He tries to grip everything incredibly tightly. He tries to strictly control his partner, manipulate her feelings, and forcefully lock down her attention. But the more tightly you grip sand in your fist, the faster it slips through your fingers. The Stoic man opens his hand completely. He loves deeply, he leads courageously, and he gives his absolute best energy to the loyal people in his life. But he knows in the absolute deepest, darkest trenches of his soul that he does not actually need any of them to survive. He is completely, terrifyingly whole on his own. This total lack of neediness is not a cold rejection of love. It is the purest, most elevated form of it. Because when you do not desperately need someone to validate your existence, you can finally appreciate them for exactly who they are, rather than what they can do for your fragile ego. When a woman deeply realizes that you immensely enjoy her company, but that you would be perfectly, remarkably fine if she walked out the door forever, she will do absolutely everything in her biological power to stay. She will immediately recognize that you are an incredibly rare, self-sustaining force of nature in a sad world full of emotional vampires. You must permanently stop trying to be the man who gets the girl. You must forcefully become the man who is entirely, ruthlessly focused on his own ascension, his own brutal self-mastery, and building his own glorious internal kingdom. The deep attraction, the profound respect, the fierce devotion, these are simply the automatic, natural side effects of a man who has totally conquered himself. Do not ever chase the side effects. Chase the mastery. If you understand exactly what I am saying to you right now, if this harsh message struck a raw nerve deep inside your chest, then this is exactly your tribe. Subscribe immediately, quietly, without hesitation, because we are actively building an elite army of men who are aggressively reclaiming their biological strength, completely dropping the pathetic performance, and mastering the quiet, relentless, beautiful art of self-reliance. The path is solitary, the daily work is absolutely brutal, but the glorious freedom on the other side is absolute. The ultimate choice is yours. Stay exactly where you are, hopelessly bleeding out your massive potential for the cheap approval of strangers, or step directly into the fire and forge yourself into something completely untouchable. Get to work.